take.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Parish Church of Groton. I'm Donna Nowak. My pronouns are she and her. I'm honored to serve this church as the co-chair of the Caring Committee and the chair of the Prison Ministry Committee. I'm also one of the people who stands outside every Sunday, regardless of the weather, for what's going on 3 years now at our Black Lives Matter vigil in front of the church. We are communities seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to the world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all, so bring all of who you are, all of your beliefs, your identities, abilities, challenges, and gifts. Bring all of what you've been and all of what you've done. There is room here for all. We're not concerned about sounds that children or Lars or anyone else might make during the service, and we hope you won't be either. Today, we will have our first sermon offered by a community member who attends only remotely. Catherine Burkell began attending First Parish online after witnessing the exceptional memorial service of her mother, Shirley Mann. Catherine lives in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of D.C. In 1982, she founded Catherine Burkell Music, a music lesson company. Catherine loves teaching, writing, and reflecting on life. Our congregation includes a wide diversity of beliefs, and we know we don't need to think alike to love alike. So we invite you to freely translate the language that you hear today. We've learned through the pandemic that our sanctuary is not in this room or any place at all. Sanctuary is what we create together. Please come in, rest a while. You are so welcome here. Now, if you'd like, please take a moment to turn and say hello to those sitting near you. Otherwise, feel free to sit in quiet contemplation before the service.
Hello and welcome to anyone who found us here online. We're glad you're here. We're glad you found us. We're doing our best to come up with doable ways to integrate our community who takes us in virtually with our folks who are here in the building. And so we welcome your suggestions and ideas. Today's service in particular offers our first reflection by someone who is a part of our community and attends only virtually. So hopefully that'll be just a beginning. And I think we have some chalice lightings coming up that are written by folks who attend remotely and then read by somebody in the sanctuary. So please know that if you have ideas or suggestions, send them to welcome@uugroton.org, and we'll do our best to incorporate our virtual community into the physical community as well. So welcome.
Hi there.
Catherine Burkell writes, "On this Palm Sunday, we remember what Jesus' entry into Jerusalem teaches about the triumph of love over hate, of hope over despair, and of unity over division. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the power of community. We sing songs of hope and renewal. Let us be inspired to continue our work for justice, peace, and compassion in the world. Let us worship together with joy and gratitude.
invite you to settle into your body more fully. Remind you that you are whole. You belong wholly upon this earth, and you are held in the love that holds us all in tenderness. With each bell, I invite you to breathe in and release, or close your eyes and then open them. The first bell is for you. The second is for your loved ones. And the third is for the world. Please stand as you're able and let's sing This Little Light. It's number 118 in the gray hymnal.
I do this formally every night before I go to sleep, like a bedtime prayer, only I'm sending my wishes directly out into the universe instead of asking my Heavenly Father for everything, which I used to do as a child. These are some of the phrases I used. May I be free from suffering. May I have joy, ease, and comfort. May I be whole in body, mind, and spirit. May I be at peace. I always begin with myself, and then I extend these same wishes for my family and all of my nearest and dearest, which of course includes all of you. I keep extending these wishes outward in an ever-widening circle, out into the world, including all the human and non-human beings, and out into the universe. On Monday evenings, there are a few of us who gather on Zoom for our Monday evening meditation group. And we always end our meditation with a loving kindness chant, which is kind of the short form. It goes like this. Some of you will know it, some of you can chime me very easily. It starts with, may I be free. May I be free. May I have joy. May I be whole. May I be at peace. Now you. May you be free. May you have
like to invite Abby Deary to come up and light the peace candle today. I'm sorry, honey. Each Sunday morning we light a peace candle to remind us that we live in a time of war and that there is violence in so many places in our world. May everyone around the globe feel safe and strong and free and loved. Please join us in singing Carolyn McDade's song, Spirit of Life.
Wonderful. So I am Lee Kinby. It is my deep privilege to serve as your sabbatical minister. I use they, them pronouns, and I would love to invite children, anybody else who would like to come closer to be able to see these wonderful pictures. We're going to do a story. Come on down. All right. Jigger came too. Yay. And motions today. Thank you, Rebecca. Yay. Where did you come from, Billy? Oh, I need the people to keep me on track. Where is Mommy?
That's mine.
All right, so we are going to do the hand motions. Donna, will you help? Okay.
Absolutely.
Actually, Zoe wonderfully made me a cutout last year, a little picture of a U and a U. It's on the fridge to remind me to do the U and the U. So I'm going to remember. You ready? We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands ready to help. And hug. Okay, somebody else made me a picture of a hug. You want to do it? Okay, Georgia, you're on. All right. So I have a couple of things to say before we start our book. And one is, you know when you go sometimes and say hi to the people in the camera? Do you know who's back behind that camera? I mean, Melissa's there filming. But we have people who go to our church who aren't able to come to the building. Because, I don't know why, do you have any guesses? Why could you maybe not come to our building? Yeah?
You're in the hospital and you're sick.
You're in the hospital and you're sick. Perfect. Yep, or you're at home and you're sick, right? Yep. You live in a faraway place. Another part of the U.S., another country, exactly. So all those reasons, and people have found us just through being online sometimes. And we are always working to find new ways to make sure they can also feel part of the community, even if they can't be in the building. And so one of the ways that we're working on that is that we try to do our meetings what we call hybrid, so in the room and on screens through the virtual. And I taught a class this fall and winter on how to write a sermon. Kind of scary, right? And we had folks who attended the class from online. And one of them was in Washington, D.C., outside of D.C. And she wrote a sermon for today, and it's going to be delivered, but she can't be here. So she also got to pick the book for today. So this is the book that she picked. It's called Afraid of the Light. Have you ever been afraid of the light? No. Has anybody ever been afraid of the dark?
I've been afraid of the dark.
Ooh, any grown-ups, were you ever afraid of the dark? Maybe we still are. Some of us may. It's like, yeah. Well, this little person in here, whose name is Ditter van Dap, that's a pretty funny name, he is afraid of the light. So here it goes. There once was a chap called Ditter van Dap who lived deep inside of a cave. He couldn't stand sunlight. It's too blinding and bright, so he always stayed in the shade. He never used candles or even a flashlight. He never used anything the slightest bit bright. He kept all those things in a chest out of sight because Ditter van Dap was afraid of the light. People tell me they're afraid of the dark, and to that I just laugh. What could be scary when there's nothing to see? It's the light that scares me. It could blind me or unwind me or illuminate things I don't like. Much better to stay in the cozy, dim dark than risk being caught in the light. Of course, in the dark, even he would remark, it's a bit hard to see what's around, but better to stick with the dark, which I know, than the light to be found. So squinting, he'd scuttle and shuffle and slip and swoop and slop and stumble and trip from his bed to his kitchen and his living room. He stayed in the dark, but that's because that's what he knew. But then one day, as he put on his socks, he found with utter dismay, my left shoe has been lost. I can't walk around with only one shoe. My toes will get cold. Oh, Garfunkel Cuckoo. I love that. I'm gonna say that. Garfunkel. He looked high and low. He looked left and right. He looked all day and all night. The trouble, of course, is that looking is tough when you're looking in darkness. All you see is dark stuff. "Ah, kersnuff it," he said grumpily. I guess I'll have to try something new instead. With a frown on his face, he opened the chest, where he kept all his candles and lights. He pulled out a candle and he pulled out a match. Squinted his eyes and he carefully lit the match and the candle. And then he cautiously opened his eyes and he discovered, although it was a little bit scary, a wonderful surprise. It didn't blind him or unwind him. In fact, it was quite a treat. The light, it lit the shadows. The flame, it made some heat, right? Flames are warm. Looking around his dingy old cave, he was thrilled with what was there. Beautiful colors, because you can't see color in the dark, right? Colors and shapes and textures. Oh, I can't believe I was scared. But I mustn't get carried away or forget what I lit this candle to find. I keep searching for my missing left shoe now that I'm not quite so blind. So he searched and he sought and he looked all around, but his gosh darn left shoe just could not be found. I wonder where it went. One candle won't do, he said with a frown. I need more light. He's getting brave, right? So up with a leap and a bound, he frolicked and gleefully lit all his lights. And he jumped and he hollered and he yelled with delight. And he looked around his cave. It was gleaming with light. Everything was illuminated and twinkling and bright. In just 49 minutes, His whole cave had been lit with 108 candles, and that wasn't it. There were kerosene lamps and a chandelier. That's like these things, these fancy, those are called chandeliers. Every inch of this cave glowed a warm golden hue. And that's when he saw, what did he see? What's that?
A mouse.
A mouse! That's when he saw, from the corner of his eye, a little mouse in red robes. The mouse was standing nearby. She smiled and slowly stepped to the side to reveal what? His left shoe. What a surprise! Mouse, it was you all along, he said with a laugh, as he realized this mouse had provided a path. She had not taken his shoe simply for play. She'd taken the shoe to show him the way. All this time, my dear mouse, I have been afraid of the light. I've lived in the dark. It was always like night. But now I see clearly what's actually true, that what I feared, in fact, was that which was new. The darkness, you see, was familiar to me. So in my mind, I made light the enemy. I thought up long stories about what the light could do, how it might drive me crazy, how it might turn me to goo. But now, thanks to you, little mouse, taking my gosh darn left shoe, I can see that my thinking, my thoughts, simply weren't true. There's no reason to be afraid of the light. Oh goodness, oh golly, what a delight. So my dears, the next time you can't find your shoe, or you're stuck, and you just don't know what to do, here's my tidbit of insight for you. Simply, courageously, fearlessly, try something new. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Afraid of the light.
Good morning. Good morning. So I'd like to share a little bit about my religious upbringing and then take a few minutes to share a reflection about Passover. And I'll introduce the rest of my family too since they're here. So we have Leo, who's 4, and Beth, who's 6, and Eric, 45. 46. Forget after my mom is Jewish and was raised Jewish. My dad converted to Judaism and had been raised Christian. So growing up, I was raised Jewish, but also celebrated Christian holidays with my grandparents on my father's side. In some ways, I have completed a circle of my life within my role as religious education coordinator. When I was growing up, there were many mornings when I did not want to go to religious education. It was important to my parents that I have a foundation in Judaism to inform my understanding of history and literature. So the agreement was that I needed to complete religious education through my bat mitzvah, and that then I could decide if I wanted to continue. Although I shifted away from formal religious studies after my bat mitzvah, I can look back and see ways that I found informal spiritual practices. Making time for my close friendships, spending time in nature, traveling, practicing yoga, and being a resource to others. I began thinking more about how a sense of community is built and how intentional community is made. When I took the Spirit Life class last year, I had time to reflect on what religion and spirituality mean to me. What rose to the top as most important is connection, both connection with myself and integrating body, mind, and spirit, and also connection through interpersonal relationships with others. About 5.5 years ago, when I moved to Groton, I only knew 2 people who lived here that I'd met through my work as a college admissions counselor. When I asked them about how to connect with other families with young children in a welcoming environment, they recommended First Parish Church of Groton. I didn't know anything about Unitarian Universalism, and I felt very hesitant about the idea of going to a church. The word church still feels very unusual for me to say after growing up talking about going to temple or synagogue for religious services. What I found is that many of the values and beliefs that I had been thinking about in my own life were aligned with the values and beliefs of UUs. I also appreciated that children were made to feel welcome and that there was a commitment to racial and social justice. I would like to take a moment to say thank you to everyone in this intentional community for all of the ways you've been welcoming and supportive of me and my family. Thank you. I would also like to share some reflections on Passover while I get a leg hug. I can't see anybody's down here. There are a lot of things that might come to your mind when you think of Passover. In a very broad sense, it is a celebration of freedom from slavery, and it includes many symbols, foods, and practices, including a special meal called a Seder. Can you raise your hands if you've ever heard of gefilte fish? Have you ever eaten it? Okay. If you haven't, it can be described as a dish made from a poached mixture of ground deboned fish. And I've heard it compared to meatloaf, but with fish. This is a food often eaten at Passover and provides some context for what I'm going to say next. So for me, my most significant memory from celebrating Passover Seders with my family growing up, and what came to my mind when Lee asked me about doing a reflection today, was when my cousin put the gefilte fish in the dog's water bowl to see if it would swim. It did not, and that image has been seared into my memory for all time. Setting that aside, what stands out for me most this year as I think about Passover is that rest and comfort are interwoven into the celebration. How many holidays can you think of that have rest as a key component in the observance? I think our ancestors knew and wanted to share with us that part of healing from trauma includes rest. When you sit for a Passover Seder, you bring a pillow to your chair, you sit back, you get comfortable. As I thought about this practice, I was reminded of the work of Resma Menakem, who in his book, My Grandmother's Hands, shares the ways that racism has led to communal trauma that has been internalized into the body and passed on between generations. I thought about the work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski in their book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and how there are essential components of completing a stress cycle, like exercise and creative expression, social interactions, especially hugs and laughter, and the importance of rest. And I thought of Tricia Hersey, the NAP minister, and her book, Rest is Resistance, a manifesto. I hope everyone has time to rest this week. It is so important. I will end with an excerpt from Tricia Hersey's book that she describes as a transmission to open the portals of rest. And I invite you to close your eyes or shift your body so you feel as comfortable as you can. The doors of the Nap Temple are open. Won't you come? This is an invitation for weary souls to rest. This is a resistance. This is a protest. This is a counter-narrative to the lie that we all aren't doing enough. We are enough. This is a counter-narrative to the lie that our worth is tied to the grind of capitalism and the lie of white supremacy. You are enough simply by being alive. Thank you for living. Thank you for resisting. Thank you for creating. Thank you for dreaming. Thank you for resting. Thank you.
Great. Beautiful. beloved community. We're talking over the course of the whole sabbatical about why we're urging us to adopt the 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism. This is a reading from Blue Notes. Blue stands for, it's spelled B-L-U-U, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. This is a grassroots organization, and they're one of the many organizations urging us to adopt the 8th principle as a congregation and then as a denomination. This is called Toward a Place of Wholeness, and it's by Viola Abbott. And it's wonderful serendipity that Deb Johnson talked about how Shirley Mann loved the 7 principles on the wall, because this refers to the principles. Blue has its own set of principles, so I think we're talking here about both sets of principles. Viola Abbott. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up our principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they're more important to our collective than that. They don't tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. We're brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has fallen short of the image presented to the world and to many who have embraced our religion. But we're also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move us toward a place of wholeness, a place that has perhaps never existed for us as a denomination. It has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of that past and because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. We want the practice of our faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. All sorts of important federal food assistance programs that were put in place during the pandemic are now ending. But as all of us who go to the store know, the grocery costs are still high. Food pantries in our state are seeing the impact already. One Massachusetts program that typically serves about 400 people a day, last week had 1,200 people a day in line. In Groton and our 9 closest towns, 4,300 households have been on SNAP, have been on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. If you include the city of Lowell, that number jumps to 23,000. People are hurting, especially households that have someone over the age of 60, households with children, and households with someone with a disability. So our gas and grocery card ministry gives over $1,000 a month away. It's entirely funded by donations made specifically to this fund. It is not funded by our pledges. It's not a line item in our church budget. It is one of the ways, however, that we are a blessing to this world. So today and next Sunday, which is Easter, we're asking for your donations to this worthy ministry. Every single dollar donated goes directly to somebody in need. We have never turned anyone away. We hope we never have to. So if you know folks outside of our church community who would be joyful about donating to this kind of ministry, they can do that on our website. I also have made some of these QR codes to go. You can bring this to them, and they can scan it. Those are on the tables by the exit doors, and I think I'll try and get a few downstairs. Again, this is not them funding our church. This is dollars that go directly to gas and grocery cards, no overhead. Our generosity enables the values we cherish to become the future we envision, and that, in this case, is a future in which no one goes hungry. So that is what our offering goes to today. We only had one person sign up to be an usher today, so I think I'm going to be out collecting with the boxes unless someone else would like to jump in. Oh, we have volunteers. You're all welcome to sign up to usher.
morning. My name is Catherine Mann Brickell. Today is Palm Sunday, the day of Christ's triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Palm Sunday begins the story of the week that leads up to Easter Sunday, one of the greatest stories of human history. It is the story of an extraordinary person whose faith in the power of love and mercy gave him the courage to face extreme adversity, to face even his own excruciatingly painful physical death, so that his beliefs could live and flourish forever. One of the premises of Unitarian Universalism is that whether one believes in God or is an atheist, we respect the power of the story of Jesus of Nazareth. On Palm Sunday, 54 years ago, I was living in a small room high up in a convent that was built above the second station of the cross in the old city of Jerusalem. I was 19 years old, and I worked as an English-speaking tour guide for the ruins beneath the convent, where Christ was scourged, the crown of thorns placed on his head, and where he picked up the cross. I think this experience was the most extraordinary experience of my life. When I was living in the old city, I was transported into another world. Not much had changed in hundreds of years. It was a maze of very narrow cobblestone streets, lined with one small shop after another, with no space in between. Men in traditional Arab garb congregated in the open doorways, smoking hookahs, and donkeys were a common sight. From my high-up window, I could see the Great Mosque and the Wailing Wall. I truly fell in love with the exotic mystery of Jerusalem. During this time, I lived alone. It was a time of extensive coming-of-age angst and of introspection and spiritual reflection. I was trying to get some perspective on how I fit into the world and the universe. It was an extended time of facing the adversity of my inner turmoil head on, and of spending a great many hours thinking my way out of it and into a more mature, more at peace self. My little room in Jerusalem was the perfect location for such reflection. In retrospect, I see that this was my first conscious experience of seeking the light within myself. My experience in Jerusalem was life-changing. And today, I would like to share some other personal stories about facing adversity. These are stories that affected me and my mental outlook and my ability to live a worthwhile and enjoyable existence. I am 73 years old, and if I were to isolate the single most important element responsible for my current state of happiness, I would say it's the process of developing the courage to turn toward adversity and face my fears. Starting at an early age, I learned the difficult lessons of how to turn toward adverse situations, as opposed to running away from them. It has been my experience that turning toward adversity leads to a transformation that brings one closer to one's own spirituality. Some might say closer to God. I have found that when I face my fears, when I stare down my adversity, it changes me and makes me a stronger, more confident person. Talking about getting closer to one's spirituality or soul I found this quote by Daniel Defoe. The soul is placed in the body like a rough diamond and must be polished, or the luster of it will never appear. I think when I was in Jerusalem, I was polishing my soul. Many of you know my mother, Shirley Mann, because she was a part of this church community for many years until her passing in March of 2021. Shirley was an only child. She adored her father. His name was Charles. Tragically, Charles passed away from pneumonia when Shirley was only 12 years old. This was in 1933, and the country was in the Great Depression. Shirley's mother, Elizabeth, was only 35 years old at the time of my grandfather Charles' passing. Charles was the great love of my grandmother's life, and with him gone, she became a single mother, raising Shirley during the Depression. She had to leave her slow-paced, pampered life, and she and Shirley had to move from their big house in Clayton, Missouri, to a small apartment, and she had to get a job to support them. My grandmother was just 5'2" tall. She was a delicate woman like a sparrow. Every morning in winter, she had to trek down several flights of stairs to the basement to shovel coal into the furnace so that Shirley and she could have heat in their apartment. You can imagine how cold and uncomfortable and difficult that must have been. Faced with such adversity, she could have stayed home and curled up into a ball in a dark room, but instead she faced it head on and learned how to cope with it. And with all this, she gradually transformed into a strong, independent woman with the will to go on and to do it well. I call that grit. Decades later, my grandmother came to live with our family of 5. She had suffered several strokes, which caused her to speak sparingly and with difficulty. She dressed impeccably, always wore tasteful makeup, and always had her hair done. Her attention to how she looked made an impression on me, and I remember wondering, who was she dressing up for? She was a spiritual woman, and so I decided she dressed up either for the eyes of her late husband in heaven or for God. She fed her spirit by practicing Japanese brush art and calligraphy. She painted with watercolors and wrote her thoughts and memories in a journal every day, and she also played piano. She never allowed herself to sink into despair. I believe my grandmother was very much in touch with her own spirituality, and she set an excellent example for my mother and me. Friends of my mother, Shirley, here at First Parish, have told me that she would say, if you want to live a long life, you have to learn how to grow old. This quote is by Swami Vivekananda. You have to grow from the inside out. None can teach you, none can make you spiritual. There is no other teacher but your own soul. I believe my mother must have been onto something when she said you have to learn how to grow old, because she passed away just 4 months short of her 100th birthday. Shirley clearly decided to make the courageous decision to turn toward the adversity of growing old. She decided to learn how to do it. She learned to grow from the inside out, and it was her own soul that taught her. Over the last decade or so of my mother's life, I witnessed her transform into a more demonstrative, more loving, and more caring mother. Thich Nhat Hanh said, at any given moment, you have a choice that either leads you closer to your spirit or further away from it. Turning toward adversity and facing it head on helps us to grow and to evolve spiritually as human beings. It takes courage to be courageous. Courage is something that can be developed over the course of one's life. And given the circumstances of my mother's childhood, I suspect she began to learn courage starting at a young age. Another type of adversity is fear. I believe fear is something that can hold us back from truly living life and experiencing our existence to its fullest. It was my father who started me out on the path to turning towards the adversity of fear. When I was 5 years old, we were living in a colonial style house that my father, who was a developer, had built on Long Island. The house was located on a hill in several acres of wooded land. One night around 8 o'clock, my parents were out to dinner and it was dark outside. My brothers, myself, and our babysitter were watching Walt Disney on television, and the forest behind the house somehow caught fire. We ran to the back porch, and I stared, frozen and helpless, as orange and yellow flames trailed twigs and branches and entire trees as they cracked and broke off, falling to a bed of more flames on the ground. I don't remember anything much more about that night, except that someone called the fire department and we had to evacuate for a couple of hours and stand across the street. At some point, the fire was extinguished and life went back to normal the next day. But actually, it didn't go back to normal for me because now I was a completely traumatized 5-year-old. I wasn't able to adapt to the event of the fire because it was terrifying and it was just too big to integrate into my limited inventory of experiences. So after that night, I developed a mortal fear of fire. Even the tiniest candle flame would send me into a real true panic. And my father decided to fix my problem. My father and I were as close as two people could be. His name was Hillard, and he was an upbeat, warm, and perennially pleasant man with a sharp wit. He was a spiritual man. He built a chapel into his last home. And he dabbled in oil painting, playing the piano, psychology, and hypnotism. He took it upon himself to eliminate my fear of fire. One night after work, he sat me on his lap. He had a book of matches, and he made me sit there while he lit the matches one by one. When he lit the first match, I screamed, terrified. But as he lit another and another and another, my screams lessened, and gradually, with each lit match, my fear subsided. My father lit the matches over and over again until he was satisfied that my fear was gone. And it was. He taught me a valuable life lesson. Face your fear, slay it now. He taught me how to turn towards adversity. We practiced learning courage together. He the teacher and me the student. I experienced the transformation that I was no longer afraid of fire. I put my father's lesson of slaying my fear to good use later in my life when I tackled the task of overcoming a real bad case of stage fright. I spent 20 years of my life studying comedy, theater, improvisation. And it took 15 of those years to succeed in overcoming my stage fright. I did this by making myself perform on stage over and over and over again. In this case, facing the adversity of fear of the stage resulted in people telling me they noticed a change in my personality. It was hard, but it was worth it because this experience significantly enhances the quality of my life today. It was an important experience that caused me to develop the courage to believe in myself. When faced with adversity, we have the power to transform. Transformation equals growth, and growth leads to an interesting, fulfilling life. I found that reacting to challenging circumstances proactively has resulted in me living my life more fully. It creates a situation where I'm not simply existing, bored, and spiritually barren. Instead, I feel alive and aware of the world and its infinite beauty, as well as its pain and suffering. Deepak Chopra said, "Awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not." I believe when we turn toward adversity and face our fears, we discard who we are not. I believe in practicing digging deep down inside of ourselves with compassion and finding inner strength and courage. Jack Kornfield said, "If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete." When we choose to be courageous, we begin the journey of turning toward adversity, of polishing our soul, of getting closer to our spirit, and of developing inner strength, which is ultimately the journey of finding joy and peace by taking control of our life. Obviously, if we are confronted with terminal illness, for example, the outcome is clear. But we can choose a path of acceptance of our fate and focus on the simple joys of being alive. Eckhart Tolle said, "Realize deeply that the present moment is all you have. Make the now the primary focus of your life." Adversity takes many forms. It can range from sickness, fear of aging, or loss of a family member, to severe chronic mental illness, addictions, loss of a child, or racism. My life experience does not equip me to advise people who must survive war and famine and other extremely adverse circumstances. There are situations that do not have easy solutions, and in many cases, perhaps there is no solution. Life can be so phenomenally hard, and we all need to do the best we can. It is so important to support each other and to care. In my mother's case, most of the last 2 years of her life were spent in relative isolation due to the COVID pandemic. And yet, her friends and acquaintances found ways to show her many acts of love, compassion, and kindness that resulted in giving her much comfort and joy. Each of us can do our part to ease the lives of others, and we can help on any level, small to great. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the power of love and compassion to help us overcome the challenges we face. When we are facing adversity, it can be easy to become consumed by fear and negativity. But by focusing on love and compassion, including self-compassion, we can find the strength to persevere. At the second station of the cross, Jesus' words in the Gospel of Matthew say, Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. What he is saying is God wants you to have peace, joy, and rest, even in the midst of the crosses we bear. In the moments when we are fearful and finding ourselves turning away from adversity, maybe we can slow down, take a breath, and choose instead to move toward our own spirit. I believe we can get closer to our own soul, transform, and find more inner spiritual light by turning toward adversity.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Melinda. Whether or not the tech works, all shall be well, and all shall be well. All manner of things shall be well. I invite you to put a hand over your heart, to reach out with the other and experience one another in all our beauty, in all our wholeness. Broken, hurting, and joyful. We are woven together with strong and sturdy threads of love. Go in peace, beloveds. Be a blessing in this world.